we are joined by Henschke, Chief Advocate for National Seniors. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Oh, lovely to see you. And yes, it's a fascinating stage of the election, isn't it? We're sort of not quite halfway through, but we're getting plenty of ideas of what people are thinking.
Absolutely. It's going to be a big one indeed. Now, you've conducted some recent studies on what older people want. Some interesting findings. What were they?
Well, the most recent poll we did looked at people who want to go back into the workforce. Now, that only came out a week or so ago, and it said that 60% of pensioners would be willing to re-enter the workforce. And I imagine that mainly is because of money, and that's what they told us. They would like to do that. And that's why we're pushing the Let the Pensioners Work policy at the moment. And I think last week, Jane Hume said that she was open to the idea. We've had the Shadow Treasurer say that he was open to the idea. We had Mr Albanese say that he thought it was a practical suggestion worthy of consideration. So this is where you would exempt employment income for pensioners, and they could get back into the workforce or even stay in the workforce, which would be great to try and fix some of those workforce shortages. And we've got them in everything from agriculture to aged care. So we do need more workers. I think the latest ABS figures showed that it's now well over 400,000. So back in, I think, November, it was just under 400,000. Now we're looking at 420,000 workers needed across Australia. So we're saying, let the pensioners work, and there'll be a big campaign push on that, and we are hoping that the government will do something about it and not just lift this work bonus, because the work bonus is a silly policy, because what it does is it says you can work one day, and then the second day you lose 50 cents in the dollar from your pension and you pay income tax. Now, in that case, you're paying more tax than a billionaire on the second day. So clearly it hasn't worked. And we've only got 2.9% of pensioners working. In New Zealand, they've got 25% of pensioners working. So we could supply those workers and keep those workers in the workforce, which is a huge issue for business. And it would also bring more tax into the system and help solve that massive debt problem we've got. So to me, it's a no-brainer. And I did talk to Corey Bernardi about this, and he was on the show the other night saying he cannot understand why a government or an opposition or indeed any party wouldn't just go ahead and do it. Get Centrelink out of their lives, let them pay income tax. So that was one of the big things that came up. We also did a survey, and it was in 21, and it was our National Senior Social Survey, which found back then 85% of older Australians believed that climate change was a problem and that they would be prepared to pay some money to fix it. Now, one of the things that's interesting about that is we've come up with a policy from our members where they say what they'd like to do is invest in clean energy bonds. Now, it's fascinating if you look at these figures. This was done where you see 85% of older Australians believe climate change is occurring. It's slightly stronger with men than women. We've also got the thing that it's moved quite a lot. It actually went from 82% to 85% in 2 years, and that was done before the most recent floods. And also the proportion of older Australians who want action, even if living costs increase, that's increased up to 77%. So that would probably be around the 80% mark now. And given we've got 20% of older Australians who are living in pension poverty, it seems that most of those that can afford to pay would pay for some action on climate change. Now, that's a very strong message because there are a whole lot of independents running on that issue. So it may well be that we see some massive surprises in this election, because unless the government and the opposition come out strongly and say what the seniors want on this, it may be a surprising result. Look at also some of these figures that we came up here, and you look around the States as well, you can see that a lot of older Australians are already invested in things that to do with renewable energy. Now, that might be a car, solar rooftop, solar hot water, etc. But if you look at some of these figures, this was done 2 years ago, you've got almost 90% of people in some states saying that they're worried about climate change and they want something. Now, this clean energy bond that we're talking about could be issued by government, and that would give a person an opportunity to take their money out of those bank deposits where they're getting nothing at the moment, absolutely nothing, and then you could put it into a clean energy bond, would give the government that money. We estimate that could be anywhere between 10 and $20 billion would go into clean energy bonds. And you don't just have to make it for seniors. You could have clean energy bonds across the whole of Australia. And think of all that money that's sitting in low interest or no interest bank deposits, and you make a clean energy bond. The Future Fund could issue a clean futures bond, for example. I'd be very interested to see what Mr. Costello and those of the Future Fund would say about this, because it would be taking money from the public in the same way as back in the Second World War we had war bonds, to fight a problem. In this case, we'd have clean energy bonds to actually do some of those things we're talking about. Help build those big battery banks that they did recently in South Australia. I think it was Elon Musk built one. And they can store the energy from clean energy and then provide it back. There was the Snowy Hydro 2.0. There's a whole lot of things that can be done, and obviously seniors say should be done.